Hey everybody, welcome to this, my first of one very comprehensive video on the Yashica-12. Distract them from removing the tape. There we go. The Yashica-12 is a medium format TLR, and that means it is a twin lens reflex. There's this lens here, which is what actually takes the photo, and then this lens is the viewing lens, and there's a reflex mirror right here in the camera, thereabouts, where the light from this lens is reflected up to the viewing screen. That's why it is a twin lens reflex camera. It has a settings coupled match needle meter, and we will take a look in the later in this video about how that works, and I will show you how to read the meter. This is the meter thing, so this is when the light comes in here that informs the meter. It has shutter speeds of 1 second to 1/500th of a second and bulb. The viewfinder, which is this doodad right here on the top, has 1x magnification and near as makes no difference, 100% frame coverage. As you can see, it has a plain matte focusing screen with a central circle, which is what's in mine, but most of the photos I've seen of this camera show a grid screen, and that includes the instructions, so I'm not sure if this is an aftermarket or a replacement screen or what, but and I won't lie, I'm partial to grid focusing screens in general, and I think including them with cameras is generally a good idea. And then the flash syncs at any of the shutter speeds, and the reason that is because leaf shutters are closed, but in order to take a picture they have to open up completely and then close again. So it doesn't matter if you're at a second or at 1/500th of a second, the leaf shutter opens up entirely at for some amount of time, and that's when the flash goes. And so with leaf shutter lenses, you can use a flash with most leaf shutter lenses on any speed. The target market for these cameras was advanced amateur to professional users, basically people who had lots of money and or could justify a camera of this cost. They're not as expensive as Raleighs were, but they weren't cheap. It is a completely mechanical camera with exceptional build quality, meaning that all of the functions, whether we're talking about focusing or the shutter itself, they're mechanical. There's nothing electronic that controls how it operates except for the light meter, which is battery powered, and the battery only controls the light meter. That's all it's used for. And this is one of the things that tells you this was a high-end camera for its day. Many of the mid-range TLRs had chemical reaction light meters, which used typically selenium in a cell, and that selenium would register the amount of light and convert that to an electromechanical action which controlled the needle in the meter. Well, as that occurred, the selenium would wear out over time, and then those meters would die, and there'd be nothing you could do with them after they died. Selenium meters have a lifespan. This one, having a battery-operated meter, means that it would have a much longer lifespan and was, in general, just a higher-end, a sign of a higher-end camera. It has an f3.5 taking lens, but an f2.8 viewing lens. Some of them have f4.5s, but this one has an f3.5. Either that or I have a typo in my outline. At any rate, the viewing lens is slightly faster than the taking lens, and that's advantageous because the viewing lens will have a narrower plane of focus, and then this will wide open, which means you'll get more precise focus with this camera if this is wide open than you might otherwise attain. Also, that did help kind of reduce the cost because an f2.8 lens would be substantially larger and would require a larger and more expensive shutter. Another nice thing about this camera is that metering in this camera, and the meter display is on the top here, is only active when there's a battery in it and when you raise the hood. If you close the hood, the battery is disconnected from the meter, and that saves your battery's power for use when you're actually taking pictures. And that's a very nice refinement, by the way, and also something that mid-range cameras would not have had. These were made by Yashica in Japan from 1967 to 1968. The 12 had a very short production life. It was preceded by the Yashica-24, concurrent with the Yashica-24, and followed by the Yashica Matte 124. Now, the 24 is this same camera, but it uses 220 film. This uses 120 and takes 12 photos on it. 220 is a different, it's the same width, but it's made differently. There's no backing paper for the film portion of it, and so they fit more film onto this same spool. This is 120, but the film portion of the 220 is twice as long and can take 24 photos. So if you have a Yashica 24, it's designed for 220 film, which is exceedingly hard to find today. So as we do, let's go over the features of this camera. We'll start on the top here. This is the viewfinder hood, which you pop up to access the viewfinder with. You can see on the back here we have the serial number, but we'll get to that. I guess we'll get to that when we do the back, won't we? Yes, we will. Okay, viewfinder hood. It's technically on the sides, but these are the strap lugs that you could put any strap through. You can even just use the standard fabric ones here, or it has the mushroom style strap lugs right here as well underneath. Here we have the meter readout, and I'll show you how to use that later in this video. So if you're using this camera and you pop that, push the front of it in, you'll get your magnifier to pop up. If you push this far enough that it stays down and you look through that little square in the back, oh, come on. Sorry, that was very dusty. If you look through that little square in the back, you can see now there's a big opening in the, come on, really? Really, Yashica? That's little guy. All right, and if you were to look through the back, so if you were to look through the back here and line up your scene in this square, that's called the sports finder. That gives you an approximation of what's going to be on your film, and it's accurate at infinity focus. And so that's a lot easier for focusing than using the knob and focusing in and out like that. And then the magnifying glass is to give you the ability to get fine focus when focusing is critical. On the front of the camera, we have the model, make and model number, the light meter port, flash PC port right here. Right here, on the top here, you can see the shutter speed and aperture readout. And these two dials right here down towards the base are what you would use to adjust them. So the one on the left is the aperture there, and you might notice the needle on the light meter is rotating or moving as well. And this is your shutter speed dial. And again, you might notice that the needle is not moving. I take that back. This controls your shutter speeds, and this controls your aperture. This switch right here is your M and X flash sync. If you flip it up like this, it's now set to M bulbs, and it should be marked on the camera like that. M bulbs are hard to come by, very impractical to use now, so you want to set it to X, which is out to the side like this, and just leave it there because any flash you can get today, and there you can see the X marked on the underside right there. Any flash you would buy today, even going back to the 80s or 70s with older Vivitars and things like that, will be an X sync bulb. And you would connect them through your PC port. So any flash you use will have to have the ability to use a PC cable. Or if your only flash is hot shoe only and can't use a PC cable, you would need to get a PC cable to hot shoe adapter that you can use. They're like $3. They're no big deal. Cheaper than a new flash if you don't have a flash with a PC cable. This is the viewing lens, and you can see around it this ring that has 3 notches. That is a Bay 1 ring for accessory filters. Taking lens, same Bay 1 ring. Here we have the shutter release and lock button, if I can figure out how to lock it. I'll show you what it looks like. No, there we go. Now it's locked right there. And if you rotate that button that way, it's unlocked. Here we have the self-timer. I'm not actually going to arm it because I have had terrible luck with old self-timers on old leaf shutters jamming. On the back of the camera, we have the serial number. That's it. That's all that's back here. On the bottom of the camera, we have these 4 little feet, which you use to rest it up against the ground so that it stays off of the ground. Tripod bushing in the center. Open and close. The dial, this unlocks and locks the back. So if you watch as I dial it towards open, watch this piece here, which is the lock. You'll notice it moves forward, which then allows the back to be opened. We're going to go over to the camera's right side next, which is this guy right here. Here's the frame count window, and basically this window will tell you what frame you're on. Here we have the film advance and shutter rearming crank. So this crank, if you have film in it, will both arm the shutter and advance the film. And I'll show you how this works when I show you how to load film and take pictures with this camera later in the video. On the camera's left side, these little pop-out doodads help you load film. And again, this is something we'll see a little bit more of later in the video. Come on. Did that go back in? Nope, not yet. There we go. Here we have the battery chamber. This is the focusing knob right here. These numbers above it that go from 22 down to 3.5 back up to 22 are the focusing scale. And so I'm going to explain how that works to you right now. All right, so I'm going to explain right now how the focusing scale on this works. You can see right now that infinity is pointing to f3.5. These numbers here are your aperture numbers. If we adjust this number now, what we're focused at, if we are at f3.5, is 10 meters or about 30 feet. If we keep going and we're still at f3.5, now we are focused at about 1.5 meters or 5 feet. It has a close focus of, here we go, 3.5 feet, about 1 meter. So that's how you read the scale in its most basic sense. Now let's say that you want to know how much of the universe and time are in focus at different apertures. If we adjust this now so that infinity is lined up with f22, and then we set the aperture on the lens to f22, everything between these 22s will be in focus. So everything from infinity feet down to about 10 feet, which is 3 meters. Is in focus at f22. Let's keep this focus the same, and let's say that we set it to f8. Then everything from 10 feet or 10 meters or 30 feet down to as close as about 15 feet, which is 4 1/3, 4.5 meters. That's what's going to be in focus. Well, we want to have something in the distance in focus at f8. There we go. We can set this to infinity to f8, and now everything down to as close as that's probably about 25 feet or, I don't know, 8 meters, 8.25 meters would be in focus. So if you want to obtain the maximum focus at f22, you set infinity to f22 and everything back to here is in focus. At f16, if you set infinity to f16, then everything from about 4 meters or 15 feet to infinity will be in focus. So what you want to use this guide for is to see how much of the scene, your depth, is in focus at different apertures. But what if we focus close? What if we say 2 meters at f22? Well, then down here, we're at probably 1.25 meters, which is anywhere from 7 down to about 4 feet, would be in focus. If we set 4 meters to f22, then everything down to just shy of 2 meters, which is about 6 feet to 15 feet, would be in focus. So these scales will tell you at different focus points how much of your scene is in focus with different apertures. Also on the side of the camera up here, there's supposed to be a cold shoe. It's just missing from this one, but it's not a hot shoe. You can mount a flash here to use a flash to take a picture, but you can't trigger the flash from here. Only the PC port can trigger the flash. Now, if we go inside the camera, we'll start here on the bottom. This is the area where you will put new film, and I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. This film roller here and this film roller help to keep the film moving smoothly through the camera. You have film guide rails here, a guide pin over here, which along with the outside rails help to keep the film from moving side to side. And then the inside rails work with the pressure plate here to keep your film flat on a flat plane during the image taking. These red triangles here are for lining up your starting point so that because you don't use a red window with this camera. So you have to line up your starting point here to get the film to line up correctly in the camera. A reminder to use only 120 film pressure plate, and then this little doodad right here sandwiches the right up here to keep the film rolling smoothly as it comes off of the 120 spool. Some notes on the Yashica 12. So in terms of commonality, for every one Yashica 12 model that was produced, about 20 Yashica 124G bodies were produced. So the Yashica 124G is 20 times more common than this and accordingly less expensive. Film sensitivity on the light meter for this only goes to 400, so using faster film on this camera will require manual EV calculation, as we'll see when I show you how to use the light meter. The meter is not connected to anything. It's just going to tell you what your settings should be. It's up to you to actually put those into practice. And this camera, just in general, seems to have been a bridge model between the Yashica Mat EM and the Yashica 124. Sort of like they had a thing, they wanted to upgrade it, and they were trying out a few things. I'm not a Yashica historian, so I don't know exactly how they iterated models, but at any rate, it was only produced for a little bit more than a year and just seems to, in terms of features and interface and all that, be a bridge between those two models. So the next thing let's do is let's talk about how to use the Yashica 12. The first thing we talk about is lens mounting and unmounting, but we can't do that with this camera. Everything is fixed. So we're going to jump right into loading film. To load film into the camera, you're going to, if you just bought it, you're going to need a 120 spool. So you'll need an empty one. You open up the camera back. If your camera does not have an empty 120 spool in here, you need to put one in. Putting in 120 spools is fairly straightforward. We'll take this one out and I'll show you here. So we're going to take the 120 spool and we're going to drop it into the back here. We're going to pull out this pin on the side. And how does this thing go in? Oh yeah. You can see that the advanced mechanism right here has a bar and it's aligned vertically right now. However that's aligned, you want to align it with the hole in your spool. There we go. And then drop the spool in like that. And I'm going to advance the film, which turns the spool, and that will help me get it lined up with this pin. There we go. That's how we load this one up at the top. Now that we have that loaded, we can grab our film that we're actually going to take pictures with and we can put it into the camera. To load the film, it's a similar process to what we just did up top. We're going to take the roll of 120. We're going to pull this pin out. We're going to drop it into this chamber here. Oh, come on. In reality, it's easier to take the tape off of these once they're in, unless you're using Shanghai, and then it is not. Shanghai Films tape is a struggle to use sometimes. So we're going to try to get this guy in here. There we go. All right. Now once we have it loaded, we're going to pull out the film and going to advance the top one until, there we go. We want to have this slit facing upwards so it's a little bit easier to load the film. Yeah, that's it. Now it's taking it up, and we're going to advance this until, there we go. We get some arrows that line up with those red triangles. Going to close and lock the back. Now, this frame window is going to start advancing. It's going to go from start until we get, now it's a red line, and it will do that until we get to 1. So we've advanced it to 1, and this arm will stop at 1, and then it just hangs there. No, it doesn't. You just turn it the other way, from the opposite way that you wound it, and then lock it back in place. Okay, so we got our film loaded in the camera. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to load a battery into this. So this camera uses the old mercury cell batteries, of which I have none because it's mercury and this is America and that's not legal. And they're also, the mercury cell batteries, frankly, at this point are not safe to have because batteries were not meant to last that long. What we're going to do is take a nickel or something like that. I'm not sure where my nickel is. and then open up the battery chamber here. And once we get it open, I'm going to show you some different options for how to use batteries in this camera today. So there's the battery chamber. You can see that it's got a plus on it to tell you that the positive terminal needs to touch the cap. The old mercury cell batteries in the PX625s, I think it is, or whatever their designation is, look basically like this little adapter right here, kind of like a mushroom that somebody cut the base off of, right? So this is a voltage adapting battery adapter, and what you would do with this is just put a modern 357 type, which is LR44, S76, whatever, into it. Put it into the chamber, take the battery cap, and then just screw the battery cap on. These adapters are spendy, usually running about 30 to 40 bucks a piece, and very easy to lose, so they are not my first choice, although in this camera they actually are. This camera's an exception. This is a dumb adapter. These are brass. They're just a machined piece of brass. You can get these on eBay for, like 10 bucks each, or sometimes 2 for 10 bucks. And the LR44 battery just drops right in like that. And then it sits in here that way and then screws on. With the modern batteries or with these dumb adapters, the voltage going to the camera is too high, and you are going to have issues with your meter readings. They're going to be incorrect because the voltage is too high. The voltage going to the meter has to be accurate for the readings to be accurate. There are also dumb adapters that look like this little metal ring that just fit over the 357 battery. Some of them fit better than others. If you have only the dumb adapter to use, I'll show you in a minute how to compensate for it. So I'm going to put the voltage adapter in, the voltage adapting adapter. The voltage adapting adapter does not want to fit in here. So you can see with this one, at least with this adapter, the battery sticks out the bottom just a little bit. I'm going to have to use the dumb adapter for this camera. Could have sworn I'd gotten the voltage adapting adapter in here before. Anyway, moving on. So you're going to put the battery in. It is possible to modify the circuitry for these, but TLRs are exceedingly mechanically complex. If you want to have that done, send it to a good Yashica repairman. Do not attempt that yourself. Now we have the battery going to the light meter. We're going to turn it on by lifting up the focusing hood, and I'm going to show you how this works. All right, so here is the light meter, and you can see that it's not responding to anything right now, which means either the battery is dead or, there we go, the viewfinder focusing hood isn't up. Now it's responding. Right, is it? It was. It worked a couple weeks ago. Okay. It's being very particular about how the light hits it tonight. So what I'm going to do is adjust the shutter speed here. And now I'm going to adjust the aperture. Maybe here, that might be part of the issue. The ISO is set to 80. That's a problem. Let's adjust the ISO up to 400. There we go. That helps a little bit, right? Maybe. Okay. Now, let's pretend that's the meter reading. There we go. Oh, it's working. There we go. And what I'm going to do is find the needle where it's working and visible to you, and then I just adjust the aperture until they line up. There we go. You can see the red needle coming out of the little wrench part of the aperture. And if you have that, it means that you have a proper exposure. So let's pretend we're going back to where things were lined up the way they were supposed to be, and that it's working. And that means that your aperture at 1/125th of a second is correct. And you can take your picture, which I've just done. Now let's adjust the shutter speed to 1/8 of a second. Come on. There we go. And now we just adjust our aperture. Oh, can't go far enough with our aperture that way. But if we adjust our shutter speed again to 1/30th, we can almost get there. Anyway, you got the general idea. These old light meters, there we go, need a whole lot of light to work. They're meant for daytime use, and but they'll give you a good reading of the of what shutter speed and aperture you need. So right now we're at, looks like f22 and 1/30th of a second, but this guy is coming in and out a little bit. It does not like this battery that we have in here. Now, everything here assumes that your battery is the correct voltage. If it's not, I'm going to show you how to compensate for that. Let's say that you are using 100 ISO film. We're going to set the aperture to f16, which you can't see, but you'll have to trust me, it's at f16. And the shutter speed to 1/125th, which is the closest shutter speed to 100 ISO film. There we go. And what you want to do then is take a meter reading and get these two doodads to line up by adjusting the ISO dial. There we go. And it's not liking that tonight, but what you want to do is use the ISO dial to adjust your meter reading to compensate for the voltage. You have to do this in full sun with the sun to your back, but that will allow you to use this meter with the modern batteries and compensate for the voltage difference. Okay, having seen how to use the light meter, the next thing we're going to do is talk about using the flash. As I mentioned, you want to set this to X unless you're using M bulbs, but realistically you likely won't because they've been out of production for a long time, as of the flash units that use them. So any modern flash that you could buy online or at a camera store today is an X flash. You'd plug it into the PC port right here, put the flash in the hot shoe, and then connect the PC port to the flash by use of the cable. And then when you take a picture, whenever you take a picture, the flash will trigger. Every time you take a picture, the flash will trigger if it is on and charged up. And like I said earlier in the video, any shutter speed for this camera, the flash is going to work. So next thing we're going to do is take a look through the camera's viewfinder. There we go, and what you're seeing now are just some studio lights. Let's see if I can get something a little bit more interesting, like just a bright light. There we go. This way you can at least kind of see what's inside the viewfinder. There you can see the central ring that is in mine, and that there's nothing else inside the viewfinder other than that. And it's an awesome viewfinder. Whether you have the grid focusing screen or this one, this is an awesome viewfinder. It's really bright. The magnifying glass is really powerful, and you get a nice crisp image on the viewfinder and can focus really easy with the magnifying glass. It's really just a very fun camera to use and very easy to focus with. Last thing we're going to do is talk about how to take a picture with this camera. It cannot take double exposures, so we're just going to take a picture. Oh, come on, really? So you've got your film loaded and you're ready to take your picture. You're going to take your light meter reading. You're going to adjust your shutter speed and aperture until they are correct. And so let's say we're at 1/60th and f8. Okay. You want to make sure that your shutter is unlocked. And after you advance the film, your shutter is armed, which means if you're halfway through a roll of film and you're done for the day, don't advance your last frame. Just let it sit unadvanced. Then you take your picture, advance, and oops, that's it. There we go. And then rotate the arm the opposite direction of the film advance until it nests back in here. You're ready to take another picture whenever you want. There we go. To focus your camera, you just look through the viewfinding hood at the focusing screen, focus in and out until you have the focus you want. Take your picture. It's a magnificently simple camera to use, and that makes using it really just a delightful experience. So I'll show you if it's going to let me. Oh, it's not. It's not going to let me show you the film going through, I don't think. We can try. But after you take a picture, nope, it is not going to let me. It's too smart. But you can see the film in here. And basically, as you advance the film, the gearing in the mechanism advances it the correct amount each time, which changes every time you advance the film because the diameter of the take-up spool changes. And so the gearing in here is fairly sophisticated to ensure that the spacing along the film is accurate. So one thing you might notice is that in order to arm the shutter, you have to advance this, rotate it backwards, and then put the lever into the hole like that, and then your shutter will fire. If you don't do that, your shutter will not fire. So there's some kind of mechanism in here that requires the lever to be like this in order to fire your shutter, and that is absolutely brilliant. I won't lie, that's fantastic. I also think that your focusing hood has to be up. Let's find out. Oh no, it doesn't. It can be down. The shutter release and the film advance are linked, so you cannot take a double exposure with it. You can only take single exposures. And that's it. We're actually through that roll now. To remove the film from your camera, oh, and I misspoke earlier. I said that this was a film guide pin. It's not. This is what the back of the camera depresses that tells the camera that its back is closed. To remove the film, we just pull this pin out. Oh. And be mindful that this thing shoots out like it's being launched from a cannon. Holy cow. And then with good film, you would have something that you would lick or a sticky thing that you would put around this to hold it shut. That is how you use this. This does not have sticky back on it. This is just, I don't know why they even have it in there. Anyway, and that is it. Once you're done with having removed that roll of film, just take your other 120 spool out, drop it into the film take-up area. I'm just going to advance it until, there we go, it connects. And we're set, and you are ready to go for the next time that you want to take a picture. Trigger the shutter so it doesn't sit armed. Put on the beat up lens cap, and there you go. That is my video on the Yashica-12. If that was helpful, please give me a thumbs up. That lets me know I'm on the right track and that I'm producing content which is helpful and useful to you. If you have questions or comments, please leave those below. I'm more than happy to respond. I try to do that about every 1 to 2 days. If you have ideas or suggestions for future videos, please let me know. And if I have the equipment and technical know-how, I'm more than happy to do that. If you have If you'd like to subscribe to find out when I have more videos coming out, please do. I'm more than happy to, I love making videos, actually. I love interacting with you guys as I make them and after they're released. And then thank you very much for watching, everybody, and I'll see you in the next video.